Let's talk about finding slope of a line specifically from an equation. So you've probably talked about finding slope from 2 points or finding slope from a graph even. But what if I just give you an equation and say, hey, what's the slope of this line? Well, let's look at this one. Here I have an equation y equals 4/3 x minus 5. And what I'm thinking about when I'm trying to figure out the slope of the line is what form is it in, or what form could I relate it to? We have a few different options for equations of lines. The first is what we call slope-intercept. And that is the equation y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. Second, you might see an equation in point-slope form. And this is the equation y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1. And in this form, the y1 and the x1 form a point, any point that's on your line. Not the fancy y-intercept that we have up here. It's any point that your line crosses through. But m is always your slope. Now, there are some other forms of lines that we use, but they aren't as common. So these are the two most common forms, and these are the ones that we're going to focus on today. So when I'm looking at the equation that we're given up here, what I want to do is relate it back to one of these forms. Which other is the most obvious to you? So I notice that y is already alone. So since y is alone, I think I want to look at slope-intercept form, because in slope-intercept form, the y is already alone. So what I'm going to do is make sure that that right side of my equation matches the right side of this formula, and then whatever number's in front of the x will be my m value or my slope value. So looking at the equation that I have here, y equals 4/3 times x minus 5. So the coefficient on x is that 4/3, and here the coefficient on x is my slope, meaning that my slope is 4/3. And that's all we need to do for this one. Now you could put some points on your graph and then count your slope that way, but if you're able to relate it back to the equations, the formulas for the equations of our lines, then you're going to save yourself a lot of time. Let's do another one. Let's remember those two forms that we had from the last slide. We have our slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, and then we also have our point-slope form. Now, slope-intercept form has y isolated on one side and point-slope form does not. Well, in this equation, I do have y all by itself on the left-hand side, so I'm inclined to relate this to my slope-intercept form. So I will do that. But notice on the right-hand side, this has a lot more going on than just mx plus b. So I'm going to work on simplifying that right-hand side. And then once I do, all I need is the coefficient on x. So on the right-hand side of my equation, unfortunately, I do need to distribute that -2/5. And then once I distribute, I will be able to combine my x terms and figure out what is the number in front of my x. So I'll go ahead and distribute that -2/5 now. If you're uncomfortable with multiplying those fractions, all I did is I put the 18/1 and the 6/1 and then multiplied the 2/5 by those two fractions. And that's where I got the 36/5 and the 12/5. From here, I need to combine my like terms, so I will combine my -11 and my 12/5. Unfortunately, I do need a common denominator, so -11/1. I'm trying to add that to 12/5 right now. To get a common denominator, I'll multiply by 5 on top and bottom. So I have -55/5 plus 12/5. And then adding fractions, all we need to do is add those numerators. So -55 plus 12 is going to give me -43/5x. So that is what I get when I add my two x terms. So my equation then is negative 43 over 5x, and my constant term is that piece back up here that I haven't touched yet, that negative 36 over 5. So minus 36 over 5. That is my equation in slope-intercept form. Now the whole question is, what's the slope? So now I can relate it back to my slope-intercept form and say that the coefficient on the x term will be my slope, which means that the slope of this line is going to be negative 43 over 5. Not negative 43 over 5x, just the coefficient, which is negative 43 fifths. Let's do one more. Okay, last one. If you want to try it on your own, go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to pull up the two forms of our line for us to compare. So slope-intercept or point slope. Remember that slope-intercept, usually we notice that the y is isolated, and point slope form, usually the y is not isolated. Well, here I have my y is not isolated, and in this equation, my y is not isolated. My y is in fact with a constant, which is the y value from whatever point we're looking at that our line crosses through. So here, this 4 tells me that one of the points on my line has a y value of negative 4. Because it's a constant, not a variable, not another x or any other sort of y, because it's a constant, I can say that it does match the form of point slope form on that left-hand side. Now on the right, I have a negative 5 in front of the parentheses and then x with another constant. And that does match the form on the right of point slope form. Remember that in front of the parentheses, that number is my slope. So here I can go ahead and just pull out the multiplier on the front of those parentheses, and that number will be my slope. So right here, this number in front is my slope. So my slope is negative 5. And if you can recognize that, you are done with this question. If you're uncomfortable with that, then feel free to simplify, rewrite it in slope-intercept form, and then you can compare it to y equals mx plus b. I'll go ahead and do that really fast as well. So again, if you're uncomfortable with using point slope form to compare this equation, I can go ahead and solve for y and rewrite it in slope-intercept form. I'll start by distributing my negative 5. And then I subtract my 4 from both sides to get it totally in slope-intercept form. So this matches my slope-intercept form, meaning that the coefficient on my x is going to be my slope. So here my coefficient is negative 5, meaning that my slope of this line is negative 5. That's a little bit about finding slope from the equation of a line. Hope that helped. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.